Ja Morant is officially back for the Memphis Grizzlies. Well, kind of, sort of, not really. He's officially back doing media, right? This is an emergency edition of Locked On Grizzlies talking about Ja Morant's first opportunity to speak to assembled media as part of the Memphis Grizzlies. His return is days away. What did Ja say? What didn't he say? And what comes next? Damichael Cole was in the room where it happened. We break it down for you now on a special edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, that's right. When Ja Morant speaks to the media for the first time in what? 9 months, 8 months, something like that, probably 7 months. You know, math is hard. The first time that happens, safe to say an emergency episode of Locked On Grizzlies will be called upon. It's, you know, an early Christmas for those of us who have been following the struggles of this Grizzlies team. Obviously, Memphis takes on the Houston Rockets later on tonight. Damichael Cole already talked to you guys about that game earlier on our latest episode before this one. But again, this emergency edition dropping right now as we speak, talking about the reality of Ja Morant's impending return and his first chance to talk to the media. And of course, Damichael Cole, Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, was there. A little bit of housekeeping, as we always do here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode, once again, brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, all those fun things. So again, special emergency edition of the pod. This isn't going to be a normal structured show. The conversation will take us where it takes us, and then that'll be it, taking us into a weekend that, again, that will get us a little bit closer and a little bit closer to Ja Morant's return. This is a Ja-centric episode, and Damichael Cole, I'm going to let you take it away because you're the guy that was actually in the room, right? I'll react to some of the things that you heard and you wrote about over at the Commercial Appeal. But what was the vibe in the room? What was the energy? What was it like to, for the first time since the season ended, right, back in Los Angeles at Game 6, to see Ja Morant and the end of season media availability? For the first time, seeing Morant in that position, the questions he answered, the things that he didn't say or wasn't asked, just some general takeaways of yours from being in that room, in that space where Ja Morant faced the media for the first time in a long time.
I thought it was solid, Joe. And it, to be more clear here, it was better than the last time we saw Ja speak and he faced all of the cameras after that first ascension, right? In the scrum. But it was it was better because he made his message clear from the beginning. Less words, more actions. This time he didn't do much talking. He didn't, fill the room with empty promises and things like that. You can tell just from the energy that he was given. It's pretty much, I'm ready to work. Like I know I got to talk about this, so let's just talk about it and let's get this out the way because at the end of the day, as he said, paraphrasing, my words are meaningless. I have to prove it on the floor. I have to prove it with my actions. I have to prove it going forward, and that's kind of what I got from him. You said, what did he say? He held himself accountable. So he's made a lot of mistakes. He said even some that aren't even public. But at the end of the day, he said that he's made mistakes. Some with his family, some of course, with the organization, with the team. But another thing that stood out to me, and I'm sure you saw it as well, Joe, was when he was asked about, players around the league. Like we talked about it on here. I've written about it. A lot of people have seen it, all the talk show, all these podcasts with current and former players and things like that. Pretty much all of them. Most of them have said something around the sort of like, oh, yeah, I've tried to reach out to Ja Morant or, oh, I tried to give their advice. Like I've had former players reach out to me saying, hey, can I help them, get in touch with Ja Morant and things like that. But Ja Morant made it clear today that his support system is his support system. And that's that. He said, no, I have not talked to any of them. When asked about, as he talked to other players around the league, he pretty much said his organization, the Grizzlies, the veterans on his team, like Derrick Rose and Marcus Smart, who he talked about as well, the front office, his family, and his friends. That's all he needs right now, and that's what he said.
That is all he needs, and that's all he should be focusing on, to be honest with you. I read your article over the commercial appeal, your 5 takeaways, and I think you're spot on a lot of what you said. I really am at a point where I could give a crap less what he says, and I was happy to hear him kind of say that. And I don't mean that as disrespectful toward Ja.
It makes sense.
I think that he said the right things. I don't think that he handled himself poorly in this environment. He got thrown some interesting questions, right? Like, shout out to mutual friend of ours, Anthony Sane, who basically was like, they're saying Halliburton's better than you and Brunson, and and credit to Sane for asking that kind of question. Sane's going to be sane. But my point with that is, even when stuff like that happened, he stayed very even keel. The energy was even.
Yeah. Not a lot of laughing. And to be honest with you, there shouldn't be. The fact that he acknowledged that he has felt some guilt about where the Memphis Grizzlies currently are. As we've talked about on here, Damichael, he should. Yeah. He should feel guilt. He should feel bad about that. It's not entirely his fault. Are the Grizzlies going to suddenly become the top 5 team in the NBA that they've been the last 2 years when Ja Morant returns? Probably not. It's not entirely on Ja, but he's also their best player. And for him to not be there during this extremely difficult stretch for this team, he should feel guilt. So I was happy to hear that. I was happy to hear him acknowledge the mistakes. And mistakes happen. Damichael, you make mistakes. I make countless mistakes each and every day in my day job, as a podcaster, as a writer, as a father, as a man, as a husband. Nobody is perfect, right? Acknowledging that and taking and accepting that reality, not pointing fingers, not saying somebody else did it to him, accepting it and being willing to move on, because it's time to play basketball, right? At this stage, you don't need to talk about, is Ja Morant, is he getting to be a better person? I hope he is. But we're at the stage of this where he just needs to stay out of trouble and play basketball. And I think he understands that, and that was very promising to see and hear. And, another thing that really stood out to me, just as I kind of looked back and listened and reflected on it, there was no apology. Now, some people may have taken that as, why isn't he apologizing? But me, you know how I took it? I don't think he had to. That's just me. Because that's clear messaging to me in terms of, I want to show you. An apology, I felt like would have been, hey, Ja, when you go in here, a PR team saying you got to apologize. Make sure you apologize.
Agreed.
And this was more of, I'm tired of talking. I'm not about to apologize to you. I'm not going to say, hey, he was asked, basically, what's his message to the fans? He didn't say, I'm sorry for this, or I put you in this situation. He said, I'm just as excited to get out there as you guys are. So him not apologizing stood out to me, not in a bad way, more in a determined to get this thing right way, in a way where I felt like he was very clear in terms of, I got to show you with actions. So he wasn't trying to fill the room with empty words. And it's got to be, because if I was in Ja's shoes, there would probably be a little bit of embarrassment there from the standpoint of, after the first time, you speak when you get suspended the 9 games in March, and he speaks to the media and he says, oh, I'm going to do this better. I'm going to do that better. The Jalen Rose interview, right? Remember that one? The ESPN.
No more interviews with any former NBA players. We're good with that. Reach our quota.
Remember, the last time the last 2 times we talked to him, one was after the Lakers lost, which I think flat out was the best that he said from a talking standpoint. All the answers were everything you wanted to hear. I've learned from this. I've gotten better from this, and I'm going to go into next season being the leader that I should be. He said the same things in his exit interviews, and then boom, it was 10, 14, about 2 weeks later. The second incident happened that led to his 25-game suspension. So with all that being said, you could tell he's through, even with the idea of empty words. So it's not that if he apologizes, he feels that they would be empty. He just knows that it wouldn't roll over easy to the crowd. So it's like, why even say it? So that definitely stood out to me.
It wasn't a PR stunt. To me, that's if going back and reading what you wrote, going back and watching it, because I wasn't able to watch it live, but I did check it out. Getting all of that information, it didn't feel like he was trained up for this. And maybe he had been, and I'm sure he had been. There's too much money on the line. This is kind of the last chance situation for him. it felt more real. It wasn't fluffy language. It wasn't, like you said, I'm going to strive to be the person that people see me to be. Ja, at the end of the day, and I'm speaking for myself, not Damichael, you can agree if you want, obviously. I don't give a crap what kind of a person you are at this point. Like your own personal journey is your personal journey, right? Mm-hmm. Do I want you to be a good role model for my children that watch the Grizzlies with me as I, continue this work? Yeah, I would love for that. But more importantly, it is about how you respond in your professional setting, because that is what should matter. And again, he said this, that's what should matter to him, his family, and the people that are going to put him in a position to be successful moving forward, because that is what matters. That's what's at stake. Generational wealth is at stake. Being a Memphis Grizzlies athlete that could theoretically earn $1 billion or so in his lifetime, that is realistic from investments and endorsements, the money that he'll make in terms of contracts in the NBA. That is what's on the table here. Those are the stakes. And of course, I would love for him to truly say he shouldn't have done what he did. But it's possible, Damichael, he has no issue with what he did. And to be truthful, if we're being real on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, it's none of my business. It's none of my business. I'd rather him not. But he doesn't care what Joe Mullinax thinks, and that's totally fine. It's his life. But the people that employ him care, right? The people that pay him that money, that give him that platform to be that guy, they care. So he has to play the game, and he has to do it the way that they want him to do it. But that doesn't mean that he has to do it through the lens of the PR publicity stunt. He doesn't have to put on that front. And I appreciated that personally.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much right. Like, at the end of the day, I felt that, his messaging was intentional in terms of he said what he meant.
Correct.
But I think from the PR standpoint, he probably was prepared to be a little bit shorter, with his responses and not give more than you're asked. It's kind of like one of the things that I may have noticed. He was asked certain questions about what he learned from this, and he was very short and brief. And he probably needed to be that way because you didn't want to open a door for other avenues of people asking different types of questions and things like that. But it was also notable to me that Taylor Jenkins and Zach Kleiman sat in this time. Remember when we did the scrum after his first suspension, or the last couple of times he spoke at the season, Taylor Jenkins and Zach Kleiman weren't in those rooms. They stood off to the side. Both of them came in there. It was almost like when a player signs a contract extension, right? And you got the GM, the coach, that to me was a signal that, hey, we're supporting Ja all the way through this. They're going to be there for him. But, Joe, one little thing stood out to me. Right? The very last question that Ja Morant was asked, we got a real dose of Ja Morant. And I say that because Ja Morant was clear. One of the things that he was clear about through this process was he's not going to stop being Ja. He's going to hold himself accountable. He's going to learn from the mistakes. But what he means by that, he's basically, letting everyone know that he can't get lost in this process of trying to be a better person where he loses his true identity of who he is. He's very clear on that. So he can be Ja Morant and be, a superstar, be a role model, be someone who stays, out of these type of situations. That is something that he wholeheartedly believes. But then at the end, we got this little smirk from Ja. It was after you mentioned Saint's question about Halliburton and Jalen Brunson and those guys passing them up. And then the next question, the very last question he was asked, was about the chip on his shoulder. And he says, it's not even a chip anymore. He said, it's share size. So that's the only time that he kind of really, gave in a little bit in terms of letting people know that, hey, that guy from the last couple seasons, that Ja Morant, who used to dunk on people and talk a little trash and let everybody know about it, he's still there. He said it's not even a chip anymore. It's share size. So that's my way of – I took that as he hears it. He didn't give in to the Halliburton and Brunson stuff and all that, but he hears it. And he can say publicly that, it doesn't mean that much because that's what he said. But I've been around Ja a decent amount of time now. I remember last year when he was voted a top 10 player, and I think he was voted 9th. And he said to me that I want to be at the top. I want to be number 1. I want to be top 2 or whatever the case, whatever it was he said. But he basically made it clear that he wants to be at the top. I don't think that's changed in the last year. I think if anything, it's fueled that hunger even more.
And maybe that is a little bit of that PR training, the ability to just say, I don't care, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I am excited about what comes next for him because I do think that he's reached a point. Because the first time this happened, I think he was trying to be someone that he's not, and that is why it didn't work. I am hopeful, right, that he is comfortable enough in his own skin to say, okay, I'm not going to be something that I'm not. I'm just going to be the best version of me and acknowledge that I made mistakes and acknowledge that I need to learn and grow. But I'm not going to try to be something that, Taylor Jenkins wants me to be or that Zach Kleiman wants me to be. He needs to do it because he wants to do it. And I think that is where real growth takes place. No one can force you to take those steps, to make those acknowledgements, to look at that man or woman in the mirror and say, I need to get my stuff together. Now it's on Morant. And I think that he gets that, at least from the perspective and perception I saw. But as you alluded to, and you're exactly right, words are meaningless. They're hollow, right? They literally, he could have gone up there and just looked at you for 20 minutes and I could have carried the same, the way that he said it mattered more than what he said. The emotion, the body language. That's where I took some stuff away. And to be honest with you, Damichael, and we can close on this, it makes me more excited to see him next week because I got a vibe of a dude who is going on a revenge tour.
Strictly business.
I got, and that's exactly right. He might still talk a little bit and be himself, but I could see him like just dropping 40 on people in the most ridiculous way and then just literally walking off the court. Like, I think that this could be like a stone cold Steve Austin situation where the glass breaks and that it's somebody's tail. And it just,
by God, that's Ja Morant.
That's exactly the feeling that I get. And it makes me excited for what's to come because I truly think that regardless of, we could have another whole episode about how we feel about the suspension. Now that it's coming to a conclusion, he gets that this can go away. And I think that is going to be more of a driving force than anything because he had to sit there and watch his team and the NBA go on without him. Even if he didn't feel guilt, which to his credit, he said he did. Even if he didn't feel guilt, the basic realization that while Ja Morant is a tremendous superstar, and he's going to remind people, he's going to remind folks pretty quickly what he's capable of, nobody is bigger than the National Basketball Association. Nobody is bigger than any of these organizations in general in terms of franchises. Nobody's bigger than the world. It's going to keep on spinning whether you're there or not, and I think he wants to take advantage of that moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, strictly business. That was the mindset approach that I got. It wasn't a lot of laughing, a couple smirks here and there, but just more business. Like you can tell he's ready to play. He talked about his mental in this process, and he basically said, there were some horrible days. There were some tough nights. But at the end of the day, being around his team, aside from being with his family and being with his daughter, being around his teammates those three things have kind of been the things that have kept him together. And like he said, now he's just ready to do that consistently, be around the team consistently, practice, play in games, and do all the things that come with being a superstar player and being, the franchise leader for the Memphis Grizzlies.
We're going to close up shop on that. But first, I do want to give a special shout out to Dave. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money you need with no interest and then settle up later. Download Dave today at dave.com/lockedonnba. That's dave.com/lockedonnba. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Again, download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/lockedonnba. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. The next time you'll see Damichael and I is on Sunday. Again, a couple days closer. We'll have a Dylan Brooks return to Memphis. I can't wait to see that hype video that I'm sure the Grizzlies are going to break out for him. There's going to be all sorts of fun things to talk about on our Monday edition of the show. But let us know what you think in the comments about Ja's words. Do they ring true, ring hollow? Are you just excited to watch the guy play basketball again? Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. For Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal, I am Joe Mullinax. This has been a special edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you for being with us, and we'll catch you on Monday. Have a great week.